Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Diddler Review Show. This is a weekly podcast for anyone who loves The Simpsons or ever has loved The Simpsons, hosted by two dudes that grew up on The Simpsons. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off. And today you might be able to see that we're doing things a little different. For one, there is no review. It is our Season 10 finale spectacular.
Spectacular!
And there he is, joining me as always, your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
I am presentable. Let's just put it that way. So I'm feeling good today. This one is I'm excited to see what you pick on this one. So I know everyone always looks forward to the top 5, bottom 1, and we talked about it a little bit without revealing our answers to each other last night. So I'm excited to see where we go here.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird season for the top 5, bottom 1 in a lot of ways. Like, I didn't feel the same, like, normal reservations that I normally have when I'm, or like, even anxieties, you might even say. But yeah, I'm curious to hear. I think I say this every season and I'm always wrong, but I feel like this season, it's going to be the most different top 5 that we've had so far.
I feel like we're gonna have the same top 5 in this one.
That's how it has always turned out. So I mean, like, if history repeats itself, you're probably right.
I told you, and to let anybody else listening and watching know, like, I literally scrolled through all the episodes and wrote down different ones I thought could be in my top 5. And through my first go through, I had exactly 5 written down. So I was like, well, let me double check just to make sure these are the ones that I want. And there might have been 1 or 2 I could have possibly put in there, but I feel like overall my first pick of the first 5 nailed it. I just had to pick the order. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're getting ahead of ourselves here.
I had about 7 or 8, it looks like, written down. I will say that this time the bottom one, I don't hate the episode by any means, but it was also really easy for me to pick. I don't know if that tells you any insight into what you think it'll be. You'll probably guess it. But before we get to that, why don't we start by talking about some of this changing that is occurring here? I actually thought that change had like several meaningful impacts or like meaningful like connections to this episode, because this is our finale spectacular. So we're going to recap season 10 spectacular. We're going to recap season 10. We're going to talk about season 11. We're going to do our top 5, bottom 1. You have a segment. I can't remember what it is for this season. I know it's with Mike Scully taking over as showrunner. You changed it to a new theme, I guess we'll say.
Well, I changed it from what it was even in the last season finale spectacular, but we like the direction that I picked for this, so that's what we're going to go with.
Okay. Well, why don't we talk about the changing stuff, then we'll do that, and then we'll do our top 5. So as far as the changing goes, I thought of 3 major ways that, in my opinion, change is going to like connect to this episode. That's one, we briefly touched on it during the season, but technology is doing some weird things where it's aging in the Simpsons world. So it's changing, even though the Simpsons are not, because we know they stay, relatively the same for the most part. I also thought, though, that brought up, especially in like 2 or 3 episodes, like in a row, it felt like some aspects of dealing with dated humor, specifically transphobia came up quite a bit, or transphobic jokes, I would say, came up a couple of times during the seasons. I think just, like everybody always talks about like it was a different time or whatever, but it's interesting in this podcast just to reflect on that. We can talk a little more on that. And then, of course, our format is going to change moving forward as well. But let's back it up, Rich. What do you think about technology changes in the Simpsons? How do you feel about that going into season 10?
I mean, we talked about it in our last podcast, but even in the first episode, when you have Lisa Kudrow's character with the cell phone, like where she's walking around with this big cell phone, and it's
Lisa
weird.
Kudrow played Lisa in that episode, if I recall. Sorry, going on.
But yeah, it's just it's a little off-putting the first time you see it, and like if anybody watching from today, they'd be like, "Well, why haven't they seen it even sooner?" But it's crazy to think about how the characters have to both change with the times but stay the same, so that they're the same characters we know and love. And I think it's going to be more off-putting the further down the road we get. Like I think as we go forward, it's going to be weird to start like eventually seeing Bart have like a tablet, and like that's just going to be like, how do you get comedy out of this? And I'm sure they'll pull it off, but it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that stuff plays out. I know, like I saw the episode where he was playing that like a MOBA game where he was like actually winning and doing well, and it was just like it was weird to see him in that.
Oh yeah, that was like one of the most recent seasons.
Yes, and it was very weird to see him in that kind of light, because I'm like I don't really picture him as that kind of person. But like there's going to be an episode a few seasons down the road even where he's playing an online RPG, like an MMO with Marge kind of at points too. So it's, and I know that is technology, so that counts, but like it's kind of off-putting, but at the same time I'm glad they will explore stuff like that. I mean, you look at shows
they have to, right? Like they don't really have a choice in the matter. They can't just ignore smartphones if they want to stay even remotely relevant, or cell phones. They're not even 2 smartphones yet.
I mean, we'll have an episode next season where we'll be in the future with I assume, was it the holograph phones? I haven't watched it in years, so
it's been a while. Yeah, Bart to the Future.
I'm looking forward to that one.
Same. Yeah, you brought it up, the cell phone in the very first episode. I think probably the even bigger, like more just in your face, I'll say, is when they go to the internet cafe. Like that's like a very dated, weird technology joke. But yeah, it's weird to see, just because it's so glaringly obvious. Like that's the problem with it. When you do have this like family that doesn't change at all, it is just, it feels like it's smacking you in the face whenever you see these items just suddenly appear into the universe. You mentioned the smartphones, and you know what, that actually, like tablets and smartphones, doesn't like that in some ways, like wouldn't that completely eliminate the idea of prank calling? Like I don't know if that's even, like in the age of smartphones, could you call Mo the bartender and ask for I want a tinkle or whatever?
I mean, you just have to block the incoming number. Remember when we first had cell phones, people used to do that, so you would call your friend and they wouldn't know it was you?
Friends? No. I guess, but it just feels a little bit less anonymous, I guess. Like, and that I think is the whole thing with prank phone calls is staying anonymous. I mean, that was the whole deal when you were kids, and like literally, if it got too hot, you just hang the phone up and everything was cool again. Until Star 69 or 67 came out, and you're just like, what? You hang up, the phone immediately rings, and you're like,
mm-hmm.
Burn it with fire.
I guess Bart could start sending letters in the mail in a sequential order of a joke. So
yeah. What's like the next, so we just saw cell phones. We've just seen home internet or internet cafes, really. What do you think is going to be the next jarring technology that we see in like season 11 or 12 or 13 or whatever? Like what's going to come across in the cartoon and we're going to be like, whoa, that's kind of weird.
If they're streaming an episode of The Simpsons on Disney Plus,
comes all the way back around.
No, like where they call it early, basically.
Oh, like they predict streaming, and they call it. I got you.
And the ownership by Disney.
Yeah, no, that's a prediction. I mean, like a technological like mind bender.
I don't know. The smartphones are such a like.
That seems like the obvious choice, right?
Like it's just they control our lives so much, and like from a technology standpoint, besides that, I guess maybe like VR, but like you can't really spend much time on doing that. So
I would say maybe like we're gonna see like maybe something like Napster, or like just like the MP3 hype in general would be something that would like potentially start to be thematic even upon like I don't know. That doesn't really seem like something to come up a lot in The Simpsons though, so maybe not. Yeah, maybe social media would be another one, but I think smartphones would probably be the next like obvious technological choice.
Yeah, well, yeah, because we got cell phones going already, so that's
So again, super dated, like an internet cafe, but I can think of two very specific examples three very specific examples where, again, it was kind of like I would consider it by today's standards for sure. It'd be considered a transphobic joke. What do you think? Like, we've come across a few things where they say just some things that feel a little bit like, oh, that's uncomfortable to read in the script.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Are we going to see more of that or less of that as we round into the early 2000s?
I definitely think we'll see more of that. I think that's just, I don't want to use the phrasing style at the time,
but like an onion on your belt.
Yeah, but like that's
just perfect with racism or homophobia.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, if you're looking at the time those episodes were airing, they're doing it as like a one-off joke where like when you see it at the time, you're laughing, oh yeah, that's funny, but like in today's standards, it very much felt uncomfortable, and like we had to read. Well, we didn't have to read the lines in the script, but we approached the subject.
We chose to read the lines as they were written, as long as it's so far. I mean, I'm not saying that's like a ground rule. If we get to a point where, I mean, like if The Simpsons got real weird and threw out some slurs at some point, I'm probably going to choose to avoid those. But yeah, as of now, we're reading it with context.
Yeah, and we talk about it too. So I feel like we handled that in a very good light and talked about it. And it's
let's not hurt ourselves patting ourselves on the back here.
Well, I was about to turn the corner there, but you interrupted me, and now I lost my train of thought. So
sorry.
It's just like it's when you're reading the line and you're talking about it, you feel bad, and it makes you feel terrible. And again, I feel like I had this very poignant moment in my brain, but I totally lost the thought. That's when you talk with Miles, it happens constantly. So you just got to, I'm just going to sit back and just let him keep talking here. Go ahead, Miles.
Oh, no. Let it pop back into your mind. It interrupt whenever it does. I'm sure it'll happen.
Well, how do you feel about it?
I agree. I think that we're probably going to see more of it than less of it. I think it'll get to a point where, because we're gaining on our own timeline, essentially, it'll eventually even out on our podcast at least, and then we can be embarrassed about the stuff that we did in 2020 and 2040 or whatever.
Oh, we're screwed in the future.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about that. It's the world's ending. It's fine. Live like there's no tomorrow. It takes on a whole lot of new meaning in 2020, but no, I definitely think we're going to see more of it for a little while. I think it's I don't know if important is the right word. Maybe that's correct usage. I don't know. I think it is a good thing, though, to kind of reflect on that, just because I know both of us, and I think a lot of our listeners, The Simpsons was an impactful part of the formation of our sense of humor. And just as we grow into like the world that is in 2020, I think it's important to reflect on some of the things that, like we probably joked about in 1999, that like, it's like, oh no, that was super shitty. Like we were definitely punching down at gay people when, we called people homophobic slurs essentially in a derogatory fashion. And then, I think that there can be some therapeutic or some just self growth aspects of reflecting on a show like The Simpsons that, or it doesn't have to be The Simpsons, but for us personally, it happens to work. And also that's what our podcast is about. So, fits the narrative. But, I think it's just anything that you can look back on and kind of see as almost like a time capsule. Time capsules carry things that were good about the past, and they carry things that were not so good about the past. And I think that's kind of a unique thing that we're getting to experience here this season more than we had in the past. And that's not to say that I just said The Simpsons is getting bad. That's not what I mean at all. I still think the show is great, but I think you know what I mean there.
I mean, it's not even the first time The Simpsons have possibly crossed the line like that either, because if you look back in the earlier seasons, how many jokes about suicide were in the first couple seasons where we were like, oh, that doesn't track as well today as it did back when those jokes were first on the show. So like, I mean, it's when society changes, you have to change. So we're still a few years away from that on the show, and once it happens, they'll take the high road and stop doing that kind of stuff.
And I do still stand by that, like, anything can be funny if it's handled in the right manner. So I'm not telling people not to joke about, any of these things that we're talking about today. But I do think that, you should probably be careful that you're writing with nuance in that case, or you're using them with nuance in that case, because otherwise you might end up the subject of like, oh man, how shitty were people in 2020 or whatever.
Especially when we are recording ourselves talking about stuff that can be accessed forevermore online.
Yeah, man, it happens all the time for sure. We
Follow us on
choose to do
Twitter.
it.
No.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, I mean, at best darn diddly while you're at it. Yeah, so I think that's enough on that, but I do think we are going to see more of it, and we'll have to continue to just kind of address like, oh man, yeah, 2003, we were kind of mean to people, or whatever the case might be when we get to those moments. But the other, I think, more very obvious, at least on this particular episode, if anybody actually tunes in, especially for our regular listeners of the show, you can see us, which is weird. It's not normal. Richie's like, what? Yeah, like we didn't actually spend a good 15 minutes before we started getting all this ready, and I do this for other stuff. But yeah, so we're on GetVokl right now. This will also be on YouTube. We'll still have the audio podcast only if you just want to hear us talk about The Simpsons. But moving forward, we are going to start recording in this manner. At least we're gonna demo with it for a little bit. We're working. I'm doing a beta test right now. I was doing the Mr. Most Days Offloads everything on GetVokl, but now we're gonna bring Best Darn Diddly over here. See if we can make that work out, do it in this format. It is going to get weird on the scheduling because this episode is technically the finale, which will come out at the end of season 10. But if you're one of our regular podcast listeners, I think that, I don't even know. I'll have to look real quick. What episode just came out in season 10? Was it Mom and Pop Art or The Old Man and the Sea Student? Possibly.
Somewhere around there. Yeah. We're usually about 4 weeks ahead on when we record to when it comes out. So if you're watching this right now, then you would be 4 weeks ahead on our podcast.
Or maybe you're a time traveler like Bart.
Ooh.
It could be. But yeah, this episode will still, the audio version of this will still go up on Podbean in our normal website after 30 Minutes Over Tokyo airs. So but that's not the only thing. Richie, be honest, 100% open, honest. It's okay. This is a safe space, as the kids like to say. We've talked about The Simpsons for 10 seasons, over 4 years. We have not missed. We have not missed a week.
I know what you're going to ask me.
We have not missed a week. Are you even at all tired about talking about The Simpsons?
Yeah, there's some weeks where I'm like, why can't I just watch an episode without having to look at it with that mind of wanting to review it? But the thing is, I know if I just watched it on my own without taking notes, I'd internally be doing that regardless. So it's you already do that. What's the you're making it be bigger in your head than it actually is at times.
No, it's a commitment. I mean, like I said, 4 years, a lot of weeks at this point. What is it? 200 and I want to say this is going to be our 224th or possibly 225th week at this point. And hey, our first live viewer jumping in with us, Bob's on the show. That's going to be another new aspect that we might theoretically have people interact with us during a recording of an episode, which is going to be something we've never encountered before.
Oh yeah, if you want me to be the chat man, I'm gonna have to start pulling it up on my phone so I can't see the laptop.
He's the chat man.
Bob just said something, I can't read that from where I'm sitting. I have to get all of them.
Then why are you wearing your glasses? Because I was like, dude, your glasses are glaring, but you need them to see. But you just basically told me that you can't see anyway. So what's the point?
If the GetVokl screens were black, I might have a better chance at reading that. But
okay, well, I'm supposed to be doing this beta testing. I will give them note that we need a night option, night mode.
Yes.
For the chat screen. And thank you, Bob. You said congratulations on the season grind. Yeah, dude, I'm going to repeat it, and it sucks for the listeners on the regular show, but whatever, dude. You just got here, and I'm happy to have you. We're changing the format slightly, so if you didn't hear, new episodes are actually going to start coming out here, and then I don't know if we're going to, catch up the gap, or if we're going to shorten the gap, or if there's still going to be some separation of when the episode reviews here versus when the episode reviews, just because the audio only. One of the things I'm most Go ahead.
We'll always have a new recording every week, audio wise, but we might not always have a visual. Like if we take a week off, we're not going to have a GetVokl that week.
Possibly, yeah. We'll have to work out the details on that.
Or you
just
lined us up to always have to do one every single week live.
Yeah, I actually gave you. I was just about to tell you how you're going to get a break, but instead, I'm giving you a bigger commitment. You're right. That's how it works. We're getting back to that. I did want to say my background is just a green screen, and that's because we will actually be getting green screen capabilities to start playing with as well, which could be fun. If you have any visual aids you want to use during the show, we'll be able to actually do that. And then you can weather person, where you like point to the thing on your screen and demo it. But
I actually already have my green screen up right now, and I picked the most boring background ever.
You actually took a picture of your wall, put a green screen up, and then made the background the picture of your wall.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a very Abed thing. Abed. I brought that up for a specific reason.
You can't take the one thing I was going to mention away from this part. You're like, make a list, and I was like, it's just going to be the one.
It's just going to be the one. I told you specifically not TV, too, so that's perfect.
Did you? I don't remember that part.
I did. It's okay. You were really into the double XP weekend of Call of Duty. All right, so you're tired of talking about The Simpsons week after week. I don't know that I'd use the word I'm tired of it, but I was also really enjoying talking about other things. On Mr. Most Days Off Loves Everything, where I would just nerd out about random topics. Bob's been on the show actually more than once. It was a great time. And so what we've decided to do is kind of blend those ideas. And that means starting like next week here, but in a few weeks on the audio show, we will be doing an alternation of Best Darn Diddley and Best Darn Everything, which is essentially going to be a ripoff of my other show, Mr. Most Days Off Loves Everything. But now,
better name
now with Richie the Whiz Kid also able to join in on the fun because he doesn't have the work conflict with the time slot that we're no longer tied to. So yay!
So you're basically saying if we can record whenever we want to.
Yeah, we're just gonna throw that diddly bully weight around. Like, oh no, if you want our 12.5 listeners, you're gonna have to make some amends for our requirements. We have a writer. Richie's gonna need a fridge full of Diet Cokes.
We also everyone loves the diddly, man. Everyone wants it. And if you want to sponsor us, we can do an episode about it. Diet Coke right there.
Oh, hey, that's a fun idea. But no, like that really is a great idea. Pin that. But we will sell out week 1, y'all. Like whatever you want us to talk about, we'll love that thing.
I feel like I could talk about Diet Coke for an hour at least.
I'd be curious to see you try. So I'm in. But that's kind of the point. The whole Best Darn Everything is going to be essentially the Best Darn Diddley treatment. But instead of talking about The Simpsons, we might not even talk about TV. Now, we're going to talk about TV a lot because we both love TV and movies and video games, other forms of entertainment. But it might not always be television related. It's going to just be literally anything that we're either already a fan of, interested in becoming a fan of, or we might just find really cool guests that they have something cool to talk about. Perfect example. Bob and I talked about Universal Studios theme parks, and that was a really fun conversation. You can still check it out on my YouTube page. And now we'll have that opportunity for Richie and I to talk with these cool people or each other about other things outside of the Simpsons universe that we love.
Except wrestling.
We might have to talk about a little wrestling, dude. Like, wrestling's probably going to come up. It's just a lot of the people I know really like it.
Do you know why The Rock's family got tested for COVID-19?
Oh my God! Is this one of your dad jokes?
I need to know if what The Rock was cooking.
Nice.
Yeah, I could have done a DeLorean one earlier when you talked about time travel.
You should have
DeLorean. I got a DeLorean that's used. Well, it's only been used for time to time.
I see what you did there. I think I sent you a picture of it. I just found a beer called DeLorean Dust IPA, and I really want to try it, mostly because the can art looks amazing. Bob points out it's almost Royal Rumble season, Richie. So that's like the one event of the year that is actually worth talking about right now in the WWE.
Every time there's like a match, you're like, it's worth talking about this.
I legit haven't watched a WWE match since WrestleMania. I have been watching AEW, but that's different. That's a completely different thing. Like, don't be crazy.
Every time I like click on Twitter, it just seems like there's tons of people complaining about the decline of wrestling, and I'm like, well, then why are you guys still watching? They're going to keep making it if you keep watching. It's like
because people love bitching about wrestling more than they love wrestling. That's the absolute truth, especially on Twitter. That is the absolute. And Richie's following the wrong people. Like Bob and our friendship started in a group of Twitter wrestling fans who all happen to podcast on various subjects, and we were looking like. See, they're all very positive wrestling fans. Like, you're not even on the dark side of wrestling Twitter. Like, that's a whole different thing.
That's terrible.
The dark side of Twitter is like the dark side of the ring series, but just for social media. But these are the types of things, that we're going to be able to dive deeper into. But Richie, since you don't want to talk about wrestling, what are some of the things that you are excited to talk about other than The Simpsons?
Well, you already hinted at it. We know we're going to do at least one episode about Community. And if it can't be TV related, then we could outsource that idea to maybe Dan Harmon or something and talk about all of his works in general.
It definitely can be TV related. I'm just saying it doesn't have to be.
I mean, hell, we could talk about volleyball because we freaking love volleyball. And we play that all the time, or we used to.
Had a fun episode where Toby and a friend of mine named Hong Dang had on for a talk about skateboarding, which was really fun. So yeah, it's volleyball is definitely in that available net, I guess you'd say. I'll be honest, dude. I've gotten really, really addicted to Survivor this last week, and I would love to talk about Survivor with some people. So maybe we could even make that happen. I know you love reality TV in general, but you usually like the really trashy dating reality TV.
Me and your wife watched 2 reality shows before you guys were married, when we were all roommates, for 2 seasons, and he hasn't let me live it down since. You and I used to watch.
You're basically a Tila Tequila super fan, dude. If you shifted your camera 30 degrees to the left, you would have a poster of her right there. I'm almost positive.
But that Rock of Love show too, we watched a lot.
Diabetes.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no, down with Tila now. She's trash now. I mean,
I heard actually, but, she wasn't always.
I have not watched a reality TV show since Pawn Stars, and apparently they're all trash on that show too.
Okay, so I don't know why, but they just added Survivor season 20 and 28 to Netflix, and I binged both of them, and now I'm looking they've got me hooked. I want the rest of the goods.
Dude, I watched The Unicorn a few weeks ago on Netflix, that little TV show, and I thought that was pretty enjoyable. So there's plenty on Netflix to talk about alone.
Interesting. Interesting.
Once again, Miles rambled, and I forgot I had another idea of something we could talk. I could talk about. We could tie it to The Simpsons, working in a factory that deals with boxes. I mean,
that'll be our most boring episode ever.
I don't know. There's lots of drama at work, so.
So yeah, those are the types of things we're still going to be cruising through. Those are the types of things we're going to talk about. Richie's drama at work. So those are the types of things we're going to talk about. We'll still be doing The Simpsons every other week, so we'll still be cruising through season 11, starting up very soon, and we're going to get to talk about some of the episodes and other things just specifically from season 11 that we're going to be getting to. There's one that I actually realized today that I realized while we were playing Rocket League, actually, before we started talking here, and I purposely kept my mouth shut because I wanted to talk about it on this. So we're going to get to that. But before we do, Rich, it's your time to shine. Season 9, we started something with Mike Scully's season. You've now changed it to something different, apparently. But you've got a segment. What is it? Talk about it. Let's discuss Richie's thoughts.
We're going to talk. I brought it up in the podcast on a weekly basis, where there's stuff from season 10. I didn't remember it was from season 10, and it's stuff that I've been using in everyday life for my whole life, and just didn't realize how much of it came from this season. And when you reflect on the show, everyone does the seasons 3 through 8 and stuff like that, but overall, there's still a lot of good material in season 10. There are a lot of great episodes in season 10. So this is season 10 in everyday life. So we're going to talk about stuff that we use and when people talk to you and then you respond with a Simpsons line and they just give you that weird look like I have no idea what you're talking about, and then you put your head down in shame and walk away, or you just go Simpsons did it. The first one, like Mayor to the Mob, was the first one that came to my mind when the guards are laying outside and they do is there anything fluffier than a cloud? If there is, I don't want to know about it. And like throw that in random conversations, people will give you really weird looks, but it works in every social situation. Like you just bring that up. It's stuff that I've used my entire life. Other ones like Wild Barts Can't Be Broken, when they're watching the trailer for the movie and then they actually watch the movie and they say, we know all your secrets. Like whenever somebody tells me something, they're like, oh no, I wasn't supposed to tell you that. That's literally how I respond. Gets me weird looks every time, but it works in every situation when they give you a secret. Homer to the Max. Whenever like work is done a lot of the time, when it's been a long day or when someone does something stupid, I will literally go, and that's the end of that chapter. And throw a scarf over. Like, I do that all the time.
That's a huge one.
Yeah, like there's so many great things from this season, and I even like the I'm with Cupid, like the prayer that Apu does before they eat. Good rice, good curry, good gandhi, let's hurry. I've used that one numerous times in my life too. People don't know why.
Probably this. Yeah, that's a killer at Thanksgiving.
Absolutely. And then there was one more that I wanted to talk about. It's the one I use more than all of them, and it's Monty Can't Buy Me Love, when comic book guy drives by the Simpsons walking and yells, get a horse. I use that one on a daily basis. I get to drive a golf cart at work, and it's a really long walk from like the admin building out to your workstation. And if I drive by somebody I know and they're walking, I will stick my head out the window and yell, get a horse, and then drive past them.
What an ass. Oh, that's funny. Dude.
When I'm driving a tug too. And it's just, I mean, there's just so many great lines from this season that I had no idea that all the stuff I use in everyday life were from this season. And I just think that shows a lot of promise and good writing.
One that I can add on, I didn't prep for this list, but since you brought up those, from Mom and Pop Art, anytime I see anything in like French or Spanish that, sounds like Le Grill, it's like, Le Grill, what the hell is that?
I have that one written down as well. I just didn't want to overkill it on this, but yep.
And I believe, is this also the season where you get there's the right way, the wrong way, and the Homer Simpson way?
The Max Power.
The Max Power way. That's the Max Power. There you go. Is
that
the wrong way?
Yeah,
but faster.
Yeah, I use that as well. I didn't even write that one down. Good job, Miles.
There we go, man. Yeah, dude, those are all really that's an interesting, like, I mean, I think that we've had phrases in the first 9 seasons for sure that could have made that list, but that's a very dense amount of common phrases that all come from just this one season.
Yep, I wrote down about 8 to 10, and that's just stuff like off the top of my head. So like, and going back through my notes a little bit, but like it's a lot in this season. So I'm interested to see if that continues next year or not, or if it's just an outlier on the blip of the Simpsons seasons.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see, because, I mean, we're going to talk about season 11 here in a bit. Just peeking ahead, though, I don't by name recognize nearly as many episodes as I did looking ahead at season 10. Now, they could just be that the names are getting kind of obscure and such, but like if I look at the description, I'm sure I've seen most, if not all, of these episodes, but definitely starting to get that little bit more obscure titles and whatnot. But we're going to get there in a minute. I think it's time, sir. You didn't really seem to struggle too much. In fact, you said you wrote down 5 episode titles and then just had to put them in order. I struggled a little bit more than you. Let's go ahead and get to our top 5, bottom 1 episode of the season. I'm going to start with my bottom 1 and just get it right out right away. I went with Lard of the Dance, the very first episode of the season. I don't hate the episode. I like the episode. I just felt that it was a little bit jarring of a transition for episodes like in the past. It definitely did not feel seamless, like it was the same. There is just some like rough edges around it that I felt as I was watching that episode. And I remember having the thought like, oh, is this going to be the season where I notice major changes in The Simpsons in a negative way, and that did not end up being the case. But because of that jarring first hit, I chose Lard of the Dance as my least favorite episode. Also relatively boring. I mean, okay, but just like there are other better Bart and Homer adventures than the getting lard. I thought that was just okay.
It was the getting lard of side stories.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Wow.
I
Okay. So we will be at least different today. I had 2 episodes written down for this one, because we talked without revealing the names. And I went back and forth between it. And then, like I told you last night, when I searched my heart, I knew the right answer. And for me, it was I'm with Cupid.
Fair.
And even that one has lines that I use on a daily basis, like "You'll kill us both," or "Die trying." So it still has good moments, but like it was just, I don't know, it was just kind of boring to me. I don't know. I feel like I am a romantic at heart, and I like doing romantic things, but like it was just boring, man. Like I don't know that one. And then I also wrote down Simpson Bible stories just because it's probably a lot of it because of the material.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
back and forth between those two, but I picked I'm with Cupid as my least favorite.
Those forced holiday episodes, I was going to bring up both of those, that you could tell that there was like a constraint on the writers that they didn't normally have. I would agree with you, but I also kind of like both of those. So yeah, that's a reasonable answer though. How about your number 5, sir?
All right, I haven't looked at this list since last night. The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace was my number 5. A lot of great moments, a lot of fun moments in that, a lot of memorable moments. I feel like in this season in general, just to be in the top 5 is a, I don't want to say honor. That's terrible phrasing, but it's an honor to be in the top 5.
The Simpsons writers should be so privileged to have your opinion. Yes. That one, I'll tell you, is one of what I consider to be two huge episodes that just were on the outside looking in of my list. My number 5, I went with Doe in the Wind, which was where Richie becomes a hippie. I was looking at your beard when I said it. When Homer becomes the hippie, I love the freakouts. I love the George Carlin appearance on the show. That one, I'll be honest, I was fighting with 2 other episodes, and it just edged itself in. But yeah, Doe in the Wind.
Okay, maybe we are going to be different then. Honestly, that one, I didn't even think for a second it would be in my top 5. So that's interesting to see how our minds.
A good old fashioned hippie freak out, man. Go freak out the squares.
In Springfield Elementary.
And then I do think this one will be on your list. We'll see if I'm correct. But my number 4 episode, I went with Mayor to the Mob.
All right. That may or may not be in my top 5. My number 4 episode was Homer to the Max.
Okay, the Homer to the Max was the other big episode that I felt was on the outside looking in. Tell you what, I'm going to tell you why I didn't put it, and then I want you to tell us why you did put it. But I chose not to go with Homer to the Max, and it was partially probably how good the episode is fault, because I had built it up so much in my mind. When we rewatched the episode, I was like, okay, it was good, but it wasn't as good as I remembered it to be, or it was just as good as I remembered it to be. It didn't exceed my expectations like some of the other episodes did.
Yeah, it's I've seen it more recently, I think, than you have, just on syndication or whatnot. So I knew what I was getting out of it pretty much already, and I still think it's just a whole lot of fun. And it's got a really stupid ending with him and changing Marge's names and them ribbing her a little bit on that. And I love the whole pepper spray thing, where the cops are chasing Homer around the tree instead of just waiting for him to come around the other side. And there's just a lot of really stupid and funny moments in the episode. And the whole Homer being proud of his name and then instantly reviled by his name is just a good bit. I honestly feel like most of my top 5 for the first time ever is going to be stuff that is, if you take a census of everybody, this is the ones they would all pick. Usually I've got 1 or 2 that I feel like feel special to me from that. But that is the one thing about the season, is there's a lot of stuff that was up here like this, just kind of going back and forth. And there weren't.
Yeah, I think that across the board, it was a solid season, and most of the episodes could have easily been in contention, depending on what day I was looking at this list to some degree. I don't know if I need to say why I chose Mayor of the Mob. I think I feel like that's one on the list that everybody is probably going to put. It's got the great Mark Hamill guest star. Homer as a bodyguard is just really fun. I love Mayor Quimby in the episode. And like, really, I think part of it is just because I one of the things that we both enjoy doing, especially pre-COVID, is going to like nerd conventions, and that one takes place at a nerd convention. So that's fun in its own right. What about your number 3, sir?
My number 3, and this is the one I was telling you last night where I was like, I wasn't sure. My 3, 4, and 5, I didn't know what order I wanted them in. And when I was thinking of my number 3 compared to my number 4, I couldn't determine which one I liked more. But when I compared my 3 to my 5, I picked the 3. And then when I compared my 4 to my 5, I thought I initially flipped those two. So if I was like, if that one's better than that one, then 3 has to be better than both of those by default. Number 3, if you're still with me here on this train of thought, is Mom and Pop Art. I enjoy the story. I like the whole Lake Grill thing is still as funny as it was the first time I saw it. The whole like dialogue between Marge and Homer about Homer taking over her dream. But the thing that sold me on putting this in my top 5 is the ending. And I talked about it on our podcast too. I love the ending to that one. I think it's very, very sweet and artistic in like a Simpson way. And like, it's not really a reset. Like they reset Marge and Homer, but like the whole town's flooded, but everyone's
it's Venice, wherever now. Yeah.
But I just thought it was a very, very sweet and thoughtful ending. And I also think they just didn't know how to reset after that.
Yeah. That's another big one that I omitted from my list. I'll be honest. I thought that one was obviously in contention, but it just did not move me as much as this next episode. And I think this one is probably a surprise, or probably won't be on your list. Maybe I'll be wrong. I went with Lisa Gets an A at number 3. Okay. I really love a huge part of it is the comptroller bit. I absolutely love the whole thing with the fake comptroller. I love the whole town having to work together against Lisa, even though she is clearly morally right. And even when they think they have her convinced to just cheat and take the money, they realize like, oh no, Lisa's too good of a person for that. So we're going to have to be even more sneaky to continue our original like sneakiness. I love all of that. And then also Homer and Pinchy is such like, that might be like the ultimate B plot in a Simpsons episode ever. Like it's just such a emotional arc that takes place in like 4.5 minutes, but it's such a good 4.5 minutes.
You know, I completely forgot about the Pinchy episode in this one. So I'm glad that you gave him some recognition. He's gone. So he's gone in my brain too. That yummy goodness.
That's fair. So going with a Lisa episode kinda for 3 is a little weird. I went with a really weird choice for number 2, but I honestly, revisiting the episode, it hit me in a special way. It made me want to go back to there. It's a side character story. I went with Viva Ned Flanders. I really love the team up of Ned and Homer, as we've talked about in the past. That leads to a lot of comedy that most of the time we see those two characters at odds with each other. So in those rare moments, like when they became best friends and had the nacho hat and stuff, and like Ned has to be the one to break eventually. But seeing those two on like a wild adventure in Las Vegas was just an absolute blast. And another one that I love the ending. And another one where I really enjoyed the guest. I had a great time talking to. I thought Mikey B brought a lot of great insight to that episode, and I'm so sad that I had to edit the majority of around that episode because his audio was missing.
That was one that was right outside my top 5 when I did my second when I went back through. And I have a feeling that my number 2 might be your number 1, just because I feel like you really enjoyed it, but you haven't talked about it yet. I just want to say first, though, I'm very, very proud of your list, Miles. I feel like yours is very, very thoughtful, and it makes me feel shameful about mine because I just went with all the ones that I like the most. But you put a lot of good thought into this list that's for the season finale spectacular.
The first time I've ever done that.
I messed it up. My number 2 episode Maximum Homer Drive. It's such a fun story. Like it's got a lot of good moments. One of the ones on my list that I didn't talk about in the previous segment is I still will do like he called me Greenhorn. I called him Tony Randall. It was a thing we had, which is the most obscure Simpsons reference I will use in everyday life.
Yeah.
Definitely get looks for that one, but like there's not.
This episode could be titled like Richie's Guide to Getting Strange Looks and like Awkward Silences, but
episode 57. But like the episode's just fantastic. It's a lot of fun. The B story, for being such a simple B plot, is ridiculously funny at times too. Senor Ding Dong.
oh my god, yes, yeah, 100%.
So yeah, Maximum Homer Drive, number 2 episode.
And you 100% predicted it. That is my number 1 episode. The real main reason that got the spot that it did is I was like reflecting on it and looking at how I felt preseason versus postseason. And Maximum Homer Drive and Homer to the Max, I had very level going into the season, like remembering like, oh, I loved both of those episodes. They share the weirdness of having Max in the name, which is just like kind of an odd thing to have happened. But whereas I said earlier, Homer to the Max, it like met my expectations, but it didn't exceed them. Like I remember the trucker episode so fondly as a kid. I love the idea of the auto like driving trucks. I remember at one point thinking if that were real, that'd be my dream job. Like that'd be amazing. 100% I'll be a truck driver. You don't have to like, be all uncomfortable and focused all day. That sounds great. But this episode, when I rewatched it, exceeded like more than Homer to the Max did. Very much so. I love the side character of Red. I love, like you said, Senor Ding Dong as such just a one of the most obscure B story, like kind of along with the Pinchy storyline, but this one was even more just out there. Wasn't Vincent Price part of that? Like, or am I tripping?
Just thinking that, but I think that's a different. Isn't that
that's just the Super Bowl episode? Yeah. Which also paired up Marge and Lisa. But regardless, Maximum Homer Drive, my number 1 of the season, which only leaves one final episode for you, sir.
It was in your top 1. I can't say enough about Mayor to the Mob. I smile from start to finish the whole way through that episode. And when you add in the fact that I didn't realize this until we did it, but that Mark Hamill also does the drill sergeant voice.
Yeah.
That just puts it back up there. The whole fluffier than a cloud thing I've talked about already. Homer is a bodyguard and like how good he's trained at first. And I still think he was a great bodyguard for what it's worth until he threw the mayor out the window. But like everything about that episode is just fun. Everything. And like you get to see more of all the mobsters too, which like, man, you can't say enough. Just hearing people voice characters and like you can tell they're having fun doing it is just that makes it fun for the audience too. So I always love Fat Tony moments. Like he's got to be such fun to play on a daily basis, and even Legs and what's his face, everyone who's the guy who was dancing, was that Legs? I can't remember right now. Oh my gosh, my mind's failing me. But like all of them are just fun, man. And the use the forks, like
the forks.
Changing guys and dolls so that he has to sing about being a Jedi, and he's complaining about it. Like,
be a Jedi tonight
for Yoda while we serve our guests the soda. Do it for Chewie and all the other puppets. Be a Jedi tonight. Like that whole thing's just fun from start to finish. And I was. My 1 and 2, went back and forth on for about maybe 5 seconds, and then I did Mayor to the Mob.
That's fair. I had a feeling that one was going to hit real high on your list, and it definitely was in consideration at the high end of mine as well. It's how it ended up in number 3, or 4. Excuse me, 4, I already fucked up my own list, but hey, whatever. Dude, so I think that we were both right. Our lists were a little different and a little the same. Like they're kind of. I think there was some crossover, but. Definitely had some outliers on mine that I think didn't quite line up with yours.
I like that though. If we were the same all the time, the show would be boring.
I mean, I wouldn't get that far. I'm still a part of it, but no. All right, man. So that wraps up season 10, or I guess, we'll say final thoughts on season 10. Let's peek at 11 real quick.
All right.
We do this every time. Just don't list every episode, dude.
No, but we usually don't have the list even up. So you have to say, like, you didn't even look at the list. So this time I pulled the list up in advance.
Oh, yeah. I'm just kind of peeking ahead right now. What are some of the episodes that immediately jump out at you, sir? There's one big one that I think we're both going to have on the top of our list, probably.
Kill the alligator and run. I'm looking forward to seeing them go to the Wang of the U.S. on that. And then obviously Bart to the Future.
That's so appropriate because I think Bob's still on the Bob's still in Florida. He's excited too.
But Bart to the Future, I'm very much looking forward to.
Big one on my list, Bart to the Future.
And like I'm with you a little bit where like a lot of this stuff I don't remember what it is until I pull up the synopsis. So I'm just not going to pull up the synopsis. So I will have fun watching again. But I believe Grift of the Magi is going to be another one to
That's
watch.
the Furby episode, I believe, and I'm very excited about that.
That'll be a lot of fun. I'm sure you're excited for Treehouse of Horror.
Of course, yeah, always. I almost don't even mention those on these, though, just because I feel like it's almost a given. I like even like the quote-unquote bad Treehouses of Horror. They're just fun.
Yeah, I mean, they're fun. They'll never be on my top list. I don't know what's wrong with me. But the first episode, Beyond Blunderdome, I'm really looking forward to that one, especially with like the context of, isn't that the Mel Gibson one? How Mel Gibson's persona.
Yes, yeah. Isn't it where he's like asking Homer for advice on how to make his movies better or something like that?
Yeah, how much people go back and forth on Mel Gibson these days. I think it's going to be very
This was pre-Passion of the Christ, I do believe.
Oh, yeah, by a long shot.
Yeah. So those are all on my list as well. The big one I thought that we'd both for sure have is E-I-E-I-DO, where they start selling to Mako.
Oh, okay. See, I just didn't even remember what it was.
Gotcha. And then the other one that I am personally excited about, let me see if I can find it, is Last Tap Dance in Springfield. I don't know why, but that's another Least episode that just like the tappa 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 sticks in my head all the time. And tappa 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 is something that I actually use anytime like somebody's like struggling to like stay in rhythm with anything. I will say that to them, like tappa tappa tappa.
Another like everyday life thing that you use from The Simpsons.
You can mark that down for next season's finale when we get there. But there's also one other episode that I'm going to go ahead and talk about. I'm going to take a little bit of a leap here because with the Best Darn Everything going in between, I'll now have 20 weeks to figure out how I'm going to make this work.
I got to lean in and see what Bob said this time.
So the episode, season 11, episode 10, Little Big Mom, has a special connection to one of our former guests who I still stay in contact with from time to time. Little Big Mom is the first episode that Carolyn Omine ever wrote. And whenever we last spoke, she unfortunately had to turn me down for another thing I asked her to do, but she said that she would absolutely love to come back and talk about her first episode. So fingers crossed, I'm going to reach out to her. I'm going to start hoping that we can schedule and make that timing out so that we can hopefully have her back on the show. Still current Simpsons writer, Carolyn Omine, to talk about her first episode. I can't guarantee anything, but I will do my absolute best to try to make that happen so that we can have that really exciting conversation. I think that'd be a lot of fun. That would be a first for us because we've talked to a lot of Simpsons writers at this point, and it's been a great experience. Super grateful for each and every one of them to give us their time. But this would be the first time that we ever got to talk to a Simpsons writer about their very first time writing for the show.
And their actual script. And I like, if you've noticed, I'm sure you've noticed, you see her name already popping up numerous times
all the
before
time.
On the episodes.
Yeah, because she's been on the staff for a while at this point. Like she's helped doing punch-up writing and all that good stuff. She's in the writer's room. But this will be the first script that she was actually the first pen on, essentially.
So is she going to get on GetVokl with us a la Mike Reese?
Oh God, I hope not. I hope so. I hope it works out better. I'm going to try real hard to make it work. Simply put, that one might be an audio only episode. It is what it is. But it's going to be an exciting season and something that I hope that we can work out. And of course, I've still got lots of degenerate comedian friends and lots of degenerate podcasting friends like Bob here. who we'd love to have back on the show. And we've got
Twitter
a lot
handle,
of
Bob the
episodes to.
Degenerate.
What's that?
That's a good Twitter handle for Bob the Degenerate.
Degeneration Bob. Yeah, I like it. But yeah, we will have more exciting guests on as well. Hopefully, this new format's going to be wild. We're going to figure it out as we go. It's going to probably, I guarantee you, we're going to fuck up at least an episode or two. It's bound to happen eventually. But hey, it is what it is. So with that, Rich, I'm excited for the future, but let's take one more second to reflect on the past. Do you have anything else that you or any of the resources that you have over there want to say about season 10 before we close the book and head on to the next chapter?
Before the end of that chapter, I would like to
I was trying to tie that in, and I just never made it work right, but way to catch it.
I saw what you were trying to throw up there right in front of the goal in Rocket League. But I just like, I feel like I enjoyed season 10 a little bit more than season 9. I feel like, I mean, I had a pretty easy time picking my top 5, but I feel like there's still a lot of great episodes in there. And again, I've made it very clear with my segment that stuff that I use in everyday life that are from this season that I just did not realize how much of it was from this season. So I can't say that I'm like, I could say I'm getting tired of the notes and the preparation. I can't imagine how you feel because you do that times a million compared to what I do. But like, even with the way you feel about doing notes and stuff for The Simpsons in general, I still feel like the episodes are very, very funny and very, very enjoyable at this point in the series. So like, I mean, people, again, we talk about this on every spectacular, but you can't say that they're declining. You can't. Like it's, if you watch these episodes, even if you watch episodes that aren't in our top 5s, there's still so much involved in each one. There's still so much good, fun humor in it. So you can't say that it's declining yet. I mean, you can say anything you want to.
Say anything you want, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Like it's hard to make a sound argument for that case.
Exactly. But I very much enjoyed this season, and looking forward to seeing what's coming up ahead in season 11.
I definitely agree with you on the season 11. I don't know if I enjoyed season 10 more than season 9. I definitely didn't feel like it declined, though. I think we talked about it. If I were going to, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull this off with the backwards camera, but if I were going to like draw a chart, like showing the quote unquote decline, if you will, it would be such a subtle decline from like season 8 to 10, even like it's still holding so strong in my mind. And there's so many good episodes. I look across the board too, and IMDb for the most part backs us up on that as well. Cause like, if you look at season 10, and you just like look at all the ratings of the show, none of them really have like an unusual dip. I think the lowest rated episode of the season is 7.0, and that's Sunday Cruddy Sunday, which is an episode I absolutely love. And like the highest episode on this season, I want to say was like an 8.5, maybe 8.2. And that was Mayor to the Mob, for what it's worth. Woo! So you were in tune with the general consensus. But even as you look on to like the next season, I'll be honest, there are a couple of dips in there. There's something that dips into like a 6.4, I believe it is, for Saddle Sore Galactica, which is commonly brought up on message boards and whatnot in Simpsons fandom. And then Faith Off has a 6.8. You see a couple of them that start to dip, but you're still seeing high 7 and 8 point ratings on each individual episode of the show. And I agree with that for the most part so far. I think that it's done. I don't think IMDb is perfect, but I do think that they've done a relatively good job of kind of paint by numbers showing how the show is holding up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good way. I always enjoy the IMDb rating system because it's pretty in tune with how I feel in most of the stuff that we watch. So, and they're a good source of information. So I'm going to adhere to their judgment on this. I don't like looking at the ratings of the episodes until after I've already seen them, but I like it when we line up with stuff.
For sure. With that, Rich, next week we're doing a best darn everything for the very first time. Do we know what we're talking about yet? Should we announce it, or should we wait because we don't know and we don't want to have to come up with it on the fly?
Well, you kind of just sold us out there, so we're not going to talk about it. Stay tuned till
But
next week
it'll
for
be
that.
an exciting time, right?
But
Yeah.
I'm not talking. Well, we can talk about butts.
Well, how about, but in the meantime, you make sure to follow us online. Richie is at @thewiz_kid23.
Miles is at Mr. Most Days Off on every social media platform and in person. If you want to come check him out, watch him stand up. And then you can follow our show, most importantly. That's at Best Darn Diddly. That's DIDDLY. I did want to point out before we leave, Miles, I feel like since you've started writing, it's changed your perspective on this show in particular. And I think it's also influencing your top 5 a little bit, especially with like the Lisa gets an A and how you like the story about that. And I just didn't know if you had any comments on that or if you feel like it's changed your perspective at all.
Maybe I honestly hadn't considered it, but that is a curious idea that I would imagine. I do think about things like as I'm looking at the script and whatnot from that light a lot more now.
Interesting.
Yeah, but cool. Well, we'll have more in-depth conversation on stuff like that, and of course, still The Simpsons. Next week, we'll be back for the very first time to present Best Darn Everything.
For now, that's the end of that chapter.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.